Hello, I'm Jane Velez Mitchell. Welcome to our live gavel to gavel team coverage of the chicken rescue trial of Zoe Rosenberg. Today is day one. We are going to be following this trial from beginning to end with our panel of experts, attorneys, activists that you see here on the screen, including a reporter at the scene, bringing us the very latest. Now, Zoe Rosenberg is charged with one count of felony conspiracy and 3 misdemeanors. That includes 2 trespass and 1 vehicle tampering. She could go to jail for approximately 5 years. Here is the action for which she is charged. Now, normally in a regular world, it's the defense that tries to hide the evidence and the prosecution that tries to bring it in. But this is not an ordinary case because Zoe Rosenberg wants to put animal agriculture on trial. So DXE, Direct Action Everywhere, the animal rights group that she is a part of, is pushing out this video, and the prosecution is trying to keep it from coming in. That is an upside down world. Last I checked, I want to go to Ellen Dent. She's an animal rescuer an animal activist who has, and you're going to have to unmute yourself, my dear, who has been a part of many of our trials and our coverage of previous trials similar in nature. Tell us about this upside down world. Why would that be, that the prosecution tries to keep the evidence out and the defense wants to bring it in?
I believe that the prosecution doesn't want people to see this. They don't want people to see this footage. Most people have no idea what happens, to these animals that end up on their plates. And if they did see this footage, of these, sick chickens, missing feathers, some not even being able to stand up, then they, would hopefully find empathy within their hearts not to consume their bodies. So I believe 100% that the prosecution is trying to conceal the truth from the public, and that is exactly what Zoe Rosenberg is trying to do, is bring the truth to the public and establish the right to rescue these poor individuals.
Excellent point. We're going to go straight out to Johnny Mora. Johnny, you are there at the courthouse. Give us a sense of the mood. What's going on out there?
Hi, Jane. Yes, Johnny here from Santa Rosa. Dozens of people here outside of the parking lot waiting for the press conference to begin. The mood is that of, wild curiosity, eyes wide open, lots of people just interacting and talking.
And where are you? How far is this from San Francisco?
I would say this is about an hour and a half of 70 miles from San Francisco north. And so in the county of Sonoma, outside of the Superior Court here in Santa Rosa.
How many DXE supporters are there?
Yeah, DXE, which is a direct action everywhere animal rights organization. I would say we're looking at about 50 supporters as of right now, but they are pouring in from the parking lot, coming in from different parts of the country right now. So I'd say a little bit over 50.
And you said there's going to be a news conference. What is that news conference?
The news conference is to talk about what's happening here on the first day. From my understanding, they're going to be establishing some parameters for the case. No jury selection of any sort as of today. We're just waiting to hear what they have to say.
All right. Well, listen, dig up some people out there and bring them on so that they can talk. I want to go to Tiffany Brunelli. You are a retired law enforcement investigator who's currently a member of DXE. And Tiffany, you were there when Zoe was arrested. She wasn't arrested the night of the incident. She was arrested several months later. So tell us about that. Okay, we're not hearing you, my dear. So we're going to have to ask. Let me ask one of the attorneys. Shaka Smith, what do you make of the fact that this happened in June of 2023, and then it was 5 months later, on the very day that Wayne Shung, who is also a co-founder of DXE, was being sentenced on another case, that they came around and they arrested Zoe Rosenberg?
I think you have a clear case of them trying to make an example of Zoe, just to really put down this sort of animal rights movement to make sure that they're able to kind of operate unfettered. And so that's what I make of it.
Yeah, certainly it appears that they're trying to make an example out of Zoe Rosenberg. And I want to go to Justine Block, who is one of the attorneys that we have here today. What's really interesting, Zoe, what's really interesting, Justine, is that according to Direct Action Everywhere, and I'm going to mute Johnny at the scene because it's getting busy over there. According to Direct Action Everywhere, the total value of these chickens, even if they were healthy, would be a whopping $24. 4 chickens, approximately $6 each. How much do you think the government is spending on this prosecution? And what is your thought about the contrast between the value of the 4 chickens that she rescued, at best $24. They also argued these chickens were very sick, so that their value would actually be $0.
My thoughts are that the prosecution dropped the theft charge because of not wanting to get into probably the value of the chickens, and are focusing on the trespass charge and the misdemeanors, trespass and felony conspiracy. As I understand, Wayne was convicted on the felony conspiracy charges, and they seem to be focused on this route of going toward a trespass. And I do think that it's a waste of government resources to be enforcing these kind of laws when there is so little recourse. We can see, as far as the timing you brought up, is that Zoe had taken evidence of animal cruelty to the authorities. She went above and beyond to document the concerns about the welfare and the well-being and health of the chickens on the farm, where she asked for investigations, went to the prosecutor's office. They shut the door in her face. She went to the sheriff, and it's all on video, where she is trying again and again to get recourse and justice. And the law enforcement system is failing those that care about the well-being of the animals. And I think that's where the government resources should be going, is to put a system in place for recourse to investigate better animal cruelty concerns.
Very interesting. Thank you. Now, what I'd like to do is play Zoe telling her side of the story. We don't know if she's going to testify, but here is Zoe talking to Unchained TV to kind of explain why she did what she did.
My name is Zoe Rosenberg. I am an animal cruelty investigator and animal rescuer with the Grassroots Animal Rights Network, Direct Action Everywhere, and I'm the founder of Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary in San Luis Obispo, California.
We just found another chicken on the floor of this farm who is in critical condition. She's collapsed on the ground. She's unable to stand up on her own. You can see the other chickens have kind of run away from me, and she can't even stand up. So we're going to get her out of here as well and get her the veterinary care that she needs so that she can survive, instead of slowly dying of dehydration on the floor of this farm where she can't even stand up to reach the water.
I'm currently facing 1 felony and misdemeanors and up to 5.5 years in prison. I've been wearing an ankle monitor for over a year, and it's all because I rescued 4 criminally abused chickens. Their names are Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. All
right. Renee King-Sonnen, you are a former cattle rancher. you ran, and your husband ran a calf cow operation out of Texas, sending animals off to slaughter. You had a moment of revelation, and now you run an farmed animal sanctuary for rescued factory farmed animals. What are your thoughts on this case? What's the big picture here?
Thank you, Jane. The big picture for me is the definition of the cruelty. They are treating these chickens as objects, as things. And in my opinion, based on what we used to do as a cow-calf operation, the reason it was called a cow-calf operation is because the cows and the calves were treated as property. And until we can continue to push the narrative extremely across the aisle that these animals are not objects, they are not things, they are sentient beings with a heartbeat, with a right to live just like us. Until we are able to change that narrative, we're going to continue to beat our head up against the same wall of the authorities, if you will, wanting to call these animals things, and so that we can prosecute, or so that they can prosecute people like Zoe and Wayne and others because they are stealing property, which we all know that is absolutely preposterous, that they're not property. But according to the authorities and definition, they're property, and we are committing crimes. And that, my big picture is we have to change that. And the only way to change that is to keep pushing the narrative out, like Zoe is willing to do, to pretty much put her freedom on the line, and others in other organizations in the right to rescue.
Excellent. Thank you. Johnny's got somebody there. Johnny, take it away.
Yes, outside. Press conference is starting in a couple of minutes here. We have Curtis Volomar, who is here with
Curtis,
us right now.
Hey,
you're a
Jane,
very
how
tall
you
guy,
doing?
but lean in there. What's happening there?
So the briefing is about to begin. We've got a lot of people gathered out here, maybe 75-ish people, maybe 100 people that are gathered outside of the courthouse here in Santa Rosa, which is in Sonoma County, part of the Bay Area. Well, it depends on who you ask. There's hot debates on what constitutes the Bay or not, but we're about 45 minutes to an hour north of San Francisco. This is the courthouse here in Santa Rosa. The briefing is about to begin. This is Zoe Rosenberg's chicken rescue trial, the first day of trial. And I was just informed that jury selection will not be today. Probably won't be till Wednesday, maybe Thursday, knowing how slow everything here has moved just from past experience. But it sounds like today and tomorrow and maybe Wednesday will be more pretrial motions, arguing what sort of evidence will be allowed, arguing what sort of defenses will be allowed. I know that over the past month and a half, there have been some pretrial hearings. The necessity defense is not going to be allowed, which is, one of the main avenues that DXE has been trying to pursue. Unfortunately, that was not allowed. The necessity defense, again, is saying that you are allowed to potentially break a law if it prevented greater harm. What has happened in the past is they've said that this only applies to people, humans, and animals are not people in the eyes of the law or the court system. So the necessity defense has been shut down. Mistake of law is another one. This one's been used in the past. Said, hey, maybe I did this thing, but I thought I was in the right. So that's mistake of law. The judge said that is not allowed, but that it might be open, that he might allow it if certain evidence gets introduced through the trial that would then allow it. So all of this stuff will probably be argued more in depth today, along with what sort of evidence will be allowed. That was scheduled for 2 days, I heard, but knowing how this courthouse works here, from being at Wayne's trial and other pretrial hearings for other cases, I wouldn't be surprised if these pretrial stuff took the whole damn week and we don't see any jury selection until Monday. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that happened.
I mean, some are saying this trial could go on for 5 weeks.
Yeah, sure, easily. Wayne's thing lasted over a month. I don't remember exactly how long, but I think Wayne's trial lasted that long.
And is there a sense amongst the people in the community like, wow, 4 chickens valued at $24 in the best case scenario, but 0 if they're too sick to be processed for food? Something that's going to be maybe possibly debated at trial, but I mean, there's got to be a lot of money being spent on this prosecution.
Oh yeah, easily. Tons of money being spent on this prosecution. And it's you know, what you just said rings eerily similar to everything that happened in the Smithfield trial that took place in St. George, where, you know, it came out in court that the pigs were worth, you know, a few dollars, and all of this money was being spent, and the vet care was actually more than the pigs were worth. You know, that being introduced was, I think, a key factor, key piece of evidence that allowed the jury to make a decision in finding them not guilty. We're unsure if that type of stuff is going to be allowed in here, and again, that will probably be discussed this week.
And will you tell Johnny it's time for him to turn the camera in the other direction and show us? So flip the camera and show us everything that's going on. And then when the news conference starts, get that camera as close as you can. Yeah, you turn it around. You know how to do that. And there you go. Get close and no, don't be on selfie. Switch it out. It's great when you get a chance to see what's going on behind the camera. This is live television. And believe it or not, in the olden days, when I started in TV, this would have cost millions of dollars, speaking of money, to have dozens of crews and a giant studio. And we've been able to put a studio into a computer and do this with cell phones. So it's really actually a marvel of modern technology. But I want to address some of the things, Christina Koo, an attorney here in Los Angeles, that Curtis just brought up about the cost of this, and also the battles over trying to keep the key evidence, the chickens and their condition, out of the case.
Well, you know, I really want to put this in context if people haven't really seen it. I mean, this is a trial that is in big farm agricultural area of the state, and it's beyond just a trial. I mean, to me, it's obviously law enforcement, the politics, and everybody's working together against Zoe and against the issues that we are litigating over. I mean, you've seen and you've heard some of the issues that typically make no sense in the real world of litigation, suppressing information and facts and evidence. And normally, like you say, it's an upside down world. The defendant is usually painted as this criminal, and yet this is flipped around. And I don't know if the public, you know, feel confused about this, and they are prevented from seeing Zoe as someone who is a compassionate person and someone who's actually a good Samaritan. And there are laws on good Samaritan aspects in our society where they are protected civilly and in some states criminally for doing an act that is obviously going to save lives. And this includes up north in Sacramento area on rescuing dogs and animals and heated cars. And those exact reasonings are the same analysis that can be used here. They are being deprived of air, water, and they're exposed to unreasonable and dangerous heat. And all of this applies. So it's really just a big conflict here. And I really think it boils down to the whole animal agriculture up there has lobbied and has worked with the local authorities and government officials to make this trial a big example to everyone.
You're looking at live images right now of the outside of the courthouse where Zoe Rosenberg is going to be put on trial. We have another wrinkle. Up until, well, I think it was last night or this morning, Zoe was hospitalized. She had suffered from lifelong diabetes, type 1 diabetes. So that's diabetes that you don't develop from dietary. It's something that she's had, and she's been hospitalized for the longest time. and we learned that she's coming out of the hospital, but let's hear from her when she was inside the hospital just a week ago.
I'm currently at the emergency room, and I just got told that I'm being admitted to the hospital. I don't know how long I'm going to be there, but this is because of complications from type 1 diabetes and gastroparesis. This is, not the news I was hoping for as I'm preparing for trial, but if I have to do trial prep from a hospital bed, then that's what we'll do to continue fighting for justice for the animals. We're going to continue preparing to put our best foot forward in this trial.
All right. Well, what do you make of that? I'm going to go out to Shaka Smith. There was a question as to whether or not Zoe could even attend, and she was going to attend some of the pretrial motions from her hospital bed. I'm going to unmute you, sir. Can you unmute yourself? There you go. And luckily, we hear just moments ago that she's actually out of the hospital, and hopefully she's going to show up any second now. We're going to get her comments. But wow, that's interesting that they were willing to proceed with this trial with her in the hospital, possibly watching the pretrial, the motions on the first day of trial from her hospital bed.
Yeah, and I think, well, it's not really important that you be there for the pretrial motions. That's going to be the judge and the attorneys. It is a big day regarding the pretrial motions about.
It's actually, we're in trial. This is day one of the trial.
Yeah, but for these motions, in terms of her not being there with the jury because the jury's not been selected. So we have these motions that are important in terms of what jury instructions that might be delivered, what evidence might be let in. So it's not really necessary that she's there for that part of it. But today's a big day. So I'm glad she's able to attend and show that, this is important for her.
When you say today is a big day, put this in historical perspective. Are we watching history in the making, Shaka?
Absolutely. Right now we're on that sort of that animal rights cusp. I think Kristen Stilt, a Harvard law professor, had written an amicus brief about the whole thing about necessity and whether or not it should apply to animals as well. And she said, of course, it should apply to animals. So we're really looking at a point of law and a point in time where things are starting to shift. And so I think this case could be another sort of bellwether case where we can kind of maybe find a little bit more justice for the animals, but it's been hard. It's been difficult.
One of our viewers, Lindsay Baker, who's also an Unchained TV host, says, brings a tear to my eyes to see Zoe Rosenberg going through so much, how desperate they are to silence her and all activists that expose them. So look at what's happening. This is live at the courthouse. And by the way, folks, we're the only ones who are bringing you this live coverage of the trial, gavel to gavel coverage. You see some other media there. I don't think they're live though. And so thank you, Johnny. When this news conference starts, I want you to get as close as you can, even if you have to scrunch down on your knees so that, or get close to the speaker so you can, if you're close to the speaker, I'm sure we'll be able to hear them. But that's a pretty sizable crowd. What do you make of that? And I'll put that to Renee King-Sonnen. What do you make of this crowd?
Well, I'll tell you, seeing the right to rescue in bold red, just stretching all the way across the front of that courthouse is, this really brings a bold message. And it is so awesome that Unchained TV is streaming this live. And the message is clear. We should have the right to rescue these animals. The fact that the necessity defense has been pretty much canceled is, to me, an abomination. They're wanting to scratch that defense so that Zoe, her very core reason for why she did this, and other activists like her, the reason they do that is because they are so heartbroken at the way these animals are just suffering. They're just treated to die in their feces and their urine. They can't walk. We should have a right to rescue these poor animals. And that bold sign, the signage, the fact that you're streaming this live should be across all news outlets everywhere. And why isn't it? Because it's not necessary. That's why. Because the powers that be are deeming chickens, cows, ducks, goats, that they do not have the right to be rescued, that it's not a necessary defense. How horrible that our humanity has come to a place where we do not see them as sentient.
I want to read a couple of things from the California Poultry Federation. Petaluma Poultry has long been a leader in free range and organic poultry, and they're known for taking great care of their birds. This is a statement from the company saying it's a leader in animal welfare. We're dedicated to the highest standards of animal care and give our birds space to roam, access to the outdoors, enrichment that supports natural behaviors, a healthy, balanced diet with no antibiotics ever. False claims about animal care standards are pushed by an extreme group, DXC, with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda that would threaten the livelihoods of Sonoma County farmers and the food security of millions of people who rely on animal agriculture. We invite those companies, that company and any agency on any time. That's what they have to say. Here is footage released by Direct Action Everywhere of Petaluma Poultry factory farms, and it's Petaluma's slaughterhouse where she was doing the action, whereupon she took those 4 chickens. Ellen Dent, you want to weigh in? We've sort of given both sides of the story here.
I mean, you can't deny the facts. The facts are that this footage was taken, at these farms, and that you can see that these animals are suffering immensely. You can see that many of them have been bred to the point that they cannot even stand up. Many of them look like they're dying. I've seen footage of activists holding dead chickens from this farm. So, I mean, everything about that statement is false. DXE is just trying to establish the right to rescue these individuals who are suffering so immensely. And as someone who's been outside of a chicken slaughterhouse, when one of these trucks pulls up, your face literally burns as you get closer to the truck because they're covered in so much ammonia. They've been raised in filth in most cases for their whole lives. It is not this farm that they put on TV, as Zoe has said before. It's not, these grassy fields. It is these, animals, supposedly cage free, but they're encaged by each other's bodies. So they're actually contained, and it's just heartbreaking to watch this footage. And I believe the public has every right to see this, and they should see this, because by the time these animals get to the store, they're, ripped apart and put in these neat packages. And it's not the truth that they were raised in any humane way possible.
Well, again, Purdue has a huge online pages and pages talking about their animal welfare standards. So I invite people to check it out for yourself. This is and just a little bit of the writings about animal welfare that Purdue has. We invite them on anytime. You can go to corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal-care and check it out. So that's one side of the story. And then you have DXC's PurdueAbuse.com, which has an 8-page report that they say documents severe animal cruelty inside these facilities. Now, we're not going to decide this today. There's a trial underway that essentially the big question is it going to put animal agriculture on trial, or is it going to put Zoe Rosenberg? Zoe Rosenberg is on trial, but she's trying to put animal agriculture on trial. Let's listen in.
In one generation. And rescuing animals from abuse and telling their stories is a really important way a part of how we make that happen, as is going on trial and using these trials to bring even more attention to the plight of non-human animals behind closed doors. We have some printouts of the press release for this trial, as well as an FAQ about the case. So if any press is interested in that, you can come find me after hearing from our speakers, and I'll happily give it to you. And we also emailed it out via email. So if you did not get the email and you would like to, then please also see me so that I can add you to our press list so you can get that information going forward. And now I just want to introduce a very incredible DXC activist and animal cruelty investigator who is the felony defendant in this Purdue rescue trial, Zoe Rosenberg. Zoe is a UC Berkeley student, a lifelong animal advocate, and the founder of Happy Hen Animal Sanctuary, which has saved more than 1,000 neglected or abused animals. Zoe has worked with law enforcement to rescue animals, but today she is facing a felony trial and potentially years in jail because she took action to rescue suffering animals when Sonoma County law enforcement failed to act. So here's Zoe to tell you what happened in her own words.
Thank you all so much for taking time out of your lives to be here today. I just got out of the hospital, and one of my biggest fears throughout my hospital stay was that I wouldn't be able to be here with all of you, because while the next few weeks will be some of the most important weeks of my life, they are also important for a much, much bigger reason. Less than a 30-minute drive from here, nestled between a Starbucks and a Subway, lies Purdue's Petaluma Poultry slaughterhouse. The cumulative sum of suffering that has been felt in this one single place is too overwhelming to even attempt to fathom. They confine, neglect, maim, and boil baby birds in mass. Nearly every single day, more than 40,000 chickens face unimaginable and often criminal mistreatment. Repeated attempts to report this facility's misconduct have proved futile. After seeing law enforcement's failure to act, I took action into my own hands. And on June 13th, 2023, I entered Purdue's Petaluma Poultry slaughterhouse. A transport truck had just parked behind the slaughterhouse fence. On the bed of this truck sat dozens of plastic crates. Thousands of chickens had been loaded into these cages like cargo, packed together so tightly that they could barely stand or turn around. Each and every one of these chickens was an individual with a personality, thoughts, and feelings. Each and every one of them had been deprived of just about everything from the moment that they had hatched. Soon they would be deprived of the one thing that they had left, their lives. I pulled open one of the crates. They slide out like drawers. Over a dozen pairs of eyes peered around, startled by my intrusion. There was one chicken who stood out from the rest. She was small and pale. I lifted her from the cage, examining her. I placed her in a padded bucket so we would not draw attention as we left the facility. I closed that crate and I slid open another. I removed 3 more chickens who appeared to be sick and suffering, and I placed them each in their own individual buckets. I named these 4 chickens Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. They were covered in scratches and bruises and small wounds. They were infested with Coccidia parasites. Poppy had an injured toe and a respiratory infection. She was choking on mucus. Aster had infected feet. They were swollen and filled with pus. The public to Sonoma County law enforcement to please finally do something to address the animal cruelty and neglect at Purdue's facilities. And the rescue of these 4 little chickens did finally spark law enforcement intervention, just not in the way I had hoped. Instead of investigating years of criminal animal cruelty, they set off on a mission to gather evidence on me and on what was perhaps the first act of compassion to ever be carried out within the slaughterhouse's carefully constructed walls. And so today, on September 15th, 2025, I will enter a courtroom to be tried on felony and misdemeanor charges for this act of rescue. If convicted, I face nearly half a decade in jail. I have spent the past over 600 days being forced to wear an ankle monitor and adhere to other strict conditions in order to remain out of custody while awaiting this trial. In many ways, despite having never been convicted of a crime, I have spent the past nearly 2 years being treated as though I have already been found guilty Nevertheless, I will walk into trial today and every day with my head held high. I refuse to accept that helping a few baby birds makes me a criminal, let alone a dangerous one. I refuse to accept that companies have the right to torture and kill as they please. And in this trial, I will not apologize. To apologize would be to say that Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea deserve the fates that they were saved from. It would be to say that they deserve to shiver in a crate, covered in scrapes and bruises, as parasites consumed them from the inside out. It would be to say that they deserved suffering and death. And so any utterance of an apology would be a lie. They deserve to be rescued. And they deserve the safe and happy lives that they now live today. Of course, it is those safe and happy lives that they now enjoy that angers the powers that be. Every day that they survive is, intentionally or not, an act of defiance. Every moment that they feel the sun on their backs, every breath of fresh air that they inhale, and every piece of grass that they swallow is an act of rebellion. It is an act that angers Purdue and Sonoma County law enforcement and every agency or company that benefits from the status quo. Even the FBI is frightened by their freedom. They are frightened by what their freedom, and more importantly, their stories represent. Their stories are a reminder that every animal who is suffering at the hands of animal agriculture is someone with a life worth living. Their stories are a reminder that it doesn't have to be this way. That instead of treating animals with apathy, indifference, and even outright violence, we can instead treat them with compassion and respect. And one of the things that I most wish to see come from this prosecution, from this trial, is for the world to learn the stories of the chickens who have escaped the cruel realities at Purdue's Petaluma Poultry facilities. The stories of most animals who fall victim to human supremacy have been or will be lost to history. And so we must remember the few who we can. When I took Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea into my arms, I wasn't just vowing to care for them and protect them. I was also making a commitment to share their stories, and if needed, to represent them in the court of law. Of course, I wish that I was representing them in the context of Purdue being prosecuted or sued, but it is what it is. No matter what, the world needs to know what they endured, how they survived, and who they are. The world needs to remember their names, and the authorities desperately want them to be forgotten. As I stand here today, I do not know what lies ahead. I'm just wrapping up as an undergraduate at UC Berkeley, and in many ways, my life is just beginning. But my future feels incredibly uncertain. In a few weeks, I might be a convicted felon. I might be on house arrest. I might be in jail. I might be in jail being denied medical care that I need to survive, which is now even more concerning, as in the last couple of months, my stomach has become partially paralyzed, which is why I now have a feeding tube that runs from my nose into my small intestine. I do not know what lies ahead, but there's one thing that I do know for certain, and that is that for billions of animals, their futures are set in stone long before they are ever born. They are sentenced to die before they even breathe their first breaths. So what I am facing might be scary, but the consequences of our inaction are much, much scarier. For the animals, the cost of allowing the world to continue as it is simply far too great. I believe that the future of the animal rights movement depends on how we handle moments like this. And we must not hide. We must not cower in fear. We all have a part to play, and we must show Sonoma County law enforcement, Purdue, and the world that we will not be silenced. We will continue to take action for Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea, and every animal whose cries for help have gone unanswered. And if I do go to jail, if I lose this case and my freedom, please try not to be discouraged. This entire prosecution is just an industry stunt meant to scare activists and fool the public into believing that animal rescuers are dangerous criminals. I am just one person, and no matter what happens to me, hope will not be lost. Life will go on. Dogs will wrestle in the park, bugs will crawl forth from their homes, geese will splash in ponds, and birds will sing to the rising sun. But also, chickens will scream as the life is torn from their bodies. Mother pigs will slam their heads against the bars of their crates, desperate to protect their babies from the men who've come to mutilate them. Cows will seize in pain as they are electrocuted by metal prods. Life will go on, but so will violence. And that is why I need all of you to promise me something. Promise me that no matter what, you will not give up. Promise me you'll take action. Promise me you'll protest. Promise me you'll rescue the victims of these violent industries. Promise me, and more importantly, promise the animals that you will fight like hell. I know that regardless of the outcome of this trial, the animal rights movement will continue forward. It is that knowledge that gives me the courage to walk into this courtroom today. It is that knowledge that gives me the strength to face whatever the outcome of this trial might be. Let's do this.
Wow. What a speech. Extraordinary. I want to do a round robin. Justine Block. Oh, wait, hold on. We've got some more people speaking here.
Thank you all for being here. My name is Lauren Gazzola, and I am the Communications Director of the Animal Activist Legal Defense Project. Along with her local counsel, Kevin Little, our clinic represents Zoe Rosenberg. We appreciate the widespread interest in Ms. Rosenberg's case, and thank you for covering this important trial. The Animal Activist Legal Defense Project is a legal clinic at the University of Denver Stern College of Law in Colorado. We do civil and criminal defense work for animal rights activists around the country. We have successfully litigated several animal rescue cases. Ms. Rosenberg is represented by Chris Caraway, a staff attorney with our project. In 2023, Mr. Caraway secured a not guilty verdict for another animal rescuer who was acquitted of theft charges for rescuing a bird from a slaughter truck in Merced, California. Our clinic has also conducted interview surveys with jurors in rescue cases, and our attorneys regularly make academic contributions to the developing law around open rescue. Currently, we also represent animal rights activist Wayne Shung in the appeal of his conviction for participation in protests at Sonoma County factory farms. I encourage you to follow that case as well, as many of the issues overlap. Both cases present important legal and ethical questions. We are proud to represent Ms. Rosenberg. Today, nearly 2 years after her arrest, she will finally have her day in court. Now, please give your attention to Murray Holden, an attorney who has been assisting our project with the case.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Murray Holden. I'm an animal rights attorney. From my perspective, the Sonoma County District Attorney's prosecution of Zoe Rosenberg is a political prosecution. It is a clear attempt to chill animal rights activism in the Bay Area and to chill the animal rights movement in general. Why else would the district attorney elect to charge Ms. Rosenberg with a ramped up felony conspiracy charge for allegedly committing low-level misdemeanors? Charging Ms. Rosenberg with that felony increases the maximum sentence that she faces to nearly 5 years in jail. And it has also enabled Sonoma County to force Ms. Rosenberg to wear a GPS ankle monitor for over a year and a half prior to her trial, despite the fact that all of her charges are for non-violent crimes, and despite the fact that she has not been convicted of any crime at all. And all of this simply because Ms. Rosenberg rescued 4 chickens, Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. Those chickens were sick, neglected, and suffering at Petaluma Poultry, a company that is owned by agro giant Purdue Foods. And when an animal is being criminally mistreated and the authorities refuse to do anything about it, despite multiple reports of animal cruelty coming into law enforcement, why shouldn't common people have the legal right to rescue those animals? People have the right to rescue dogs who are trapped and suffering in hot cars when law enforcement isn't coming to help. So why should a chicken who is trapped and suffering inside of a crate be any different? I don't think any compassionate person, even someone who eats chickens, could come face to face with those 4 chickens, sick and suffering in their crates the way that they were, and simply ignore them and just walk away without trying to help. I think our compassion, all of us, would drive us to help those chickens. And when our compassion drives us to help someone who is in need, providing that help shouldn't be illegal. When we do something that it is our moral duty to do, including rescuing animals who need our help, those actions should be legal. And in several prior cases, similar to this one, involving the open rescue of animals by activists, jurors have agreed with this. They have acquitted animal rescuers who were prosecuted for helping animals in need when nobody else would, when law enforcement wouldn't come despite all of the reports. So we hope for an acquittal in Ms. Rosenberg's case as well. Look, Ms. Rosenberg admits that she rescued the chickens. So this case is not a whodunit, it's a whydunit. The key question here is why Ms. Rosenberg rescued these chickens, why she did what she did. And when Ms. Rosenberg's jury hears why she did it, we believe that they will understand that this rescue was not a crime, because compassion is not a crime. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Let's keep hearing what's going on.
Thank you so much to Zoe and Murray for speaking, and we are going to continue on. Zoe and the legal team are going to get heading into court first to make sure that they're there on time. We'll get some instructions before we head into court. But first, I want to move this podium and get a group photo and group video without it in the way of all the supporters who are gathered here today to support Zoe and the right to rescue. So,
And it looks like there's media there, which is good because, you know, the reason we started Unchained TV was because the media wasn't covering these stories, or at least not covering them fairly. But it looks like there is some media coverage there. I think every news organization in America and the world should be there. But we are the only ones live. You saw it. I want to do a round robin while, and Johnny Morrow's done a great job. Keep going, Johnny. We're going to show your video and then get reaction from folks. Let's start with Ellen Dent. What's your reaction to what you saw and just heard?
I am just completely, taken aback and I'm inspired by Zoe's bravery. I had the extreme pleasure of meeting her at AVA last year. So I'm at the vegan summit that they have every year in either DC or LA, just to, Animal Vegan Advocacy Summit, just so everybody knows what that is. But I had the extreme pleasure of meeting her there. She had the ankle monitor on. She took it in complete stride. I thanked her for all that she was doing. She said that this was her duty to do this, for these chickens. And, I'm completely just emotional hearing her speak, knowing that she is actually not just risking her freedom, but her life for saving, these chickens, Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea are their names. They are individuals. Chickens do have personalities, as Zoe has explained. I have met chickens with different personalities as well at sanctuaries. Once these chickens are out of these situations, you really get to know them, and their lives are just as important as ours. And people need to know that they are individuals. They do dream. They do have their own, likes and dislikes. Some of them even hug people. They'll come and crawl into your lap. There's nothing more heartbreaking than having a chicken that's been saved off of these trucks come and crawl in your lap. And you realize just how twisted our society is to think that this is even acceptable to do to them.
Thank you, Ellen. Let's do a round robin with the attorneys. Let's start with Shaka. Shaka, that was, if the jury could hear that, but that's the big if. Will the jury hear any of that? And you can unmute, sir. Unmute. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly powerful, especially hearing that from Zoe. Of course, the health issues underscoring the cruelty of the prosecution itself. The jury can hear that, and that's what we're going to be arguing in court, is getting those motions and what kind of jury instructions the jury can get. What can they get on mistake of law? What sort of, how are they going to instruct the jury to look at the different issues? So I think it's going to be important, those jury instructions, and certainly how her attorneys can convey to the jury her position. I think it might be very important for her to testify. I think hearing from her directly will be important. Again, it's not a who done it, but a why done it. So I think her testifying would really be helpful to hopefully get these charges acquitted.
Justine, it was almost as if we heard the opening statement, and everybody settle down. Thank you, my dears. It was almost like we heard the opening statements. Really brilliant, actually.
It's good to see Zoe in capable, very articulate hands with her legal defense team. They know what they're doing. Compassion should not be a crime. I hope they're successful in getting in the video footage that we saw as evidence, so that the jury can see Zoe's intent in helping the injured, sick, suffering chickens. You can see in the video, she pulled out each bin. She didn't just grab chickens and run off. I mean, she was checking to see the state of the chickens, and she removed and rescued the ones that were very sick. And
let's just ask about the idea that the defense is putting out the video of the incident that resulted in the charges. That's an upside down world. Explain that a little, Justine, and speak up. Thank you.
I think that they're putting it out. Thankfully, that the judge didn't allow the gag order, so that she's allowed to put this out in the public realm. It's I think generally people want to believe that the farm animals are treated humanely, and you saw the statement. You read the statement earlier that was issued by Purdue, and you can see that what the video counters what we want to believe as the humane treatment of the chickens and other animals at farms. So it's difficult to watch, and I think that is good that it's out there. And I did want to also say she is so brave to risk her own, not only her liberty, but her health.
I want to go to Renee King-Sonnen because, wow, that speech, we started today saying, be part of history, share out. and I urge everybody, share out, comment. I think that speech that Zoe gave, oh my gosh, if she could have given that speech to the jury, but the question is, will she be allowed to give that speech? But what was your reaction to her speech, Renee?
Gosh, I was listening, and one of the quotes that she said is, "Life will go on, but so will the violence." That just sent shivers down my spine, because that is exactly what's going on, is, life and violence at the same time. And the fact that we are allowing that kind of violence on en masse, like she said, they're confined, they're neglected, they're boiled, maimed en masse, I think is what she said. That is, to me, when you get that in perspective, that these animals are being confined, boiled, neglected, maimed en masse. I remember when Ryuji and I were at a big factory farm a few years ago, and we rescued Omen from one of those big factory farms, and I saw all of those cages lined up in that trailer, just thousands of chickens crammed in there, and we were illegally inside of this factory. We were both crawling around underneath the big trailer because there was one lone chicken that had somehow escaped, one lone chicken out of those thousands. And we confiscated her. Her name was Omen. And we brought her to Rowdy Girl Sanctuary from Arkansas. She was someone. And we told her story around the world because she made such a difference in our lives. We have chickens at Rowdy Girl that come from all sorts of neglect. And we give them the best of care. And there is no reason why these chickens and the chickens that are neglected and confined and maimed and boiled should not be getting the same standard of care. We should have a global standard of care for all animals. We should not be distinguishing a food animal from a regular animal, because who is to say that those animals are food, except the people and the powers that be that want to use their bodies for commodities for profit. How horrible of a system that we have.
I want to, again, invite any company, Purdue, Petaluma Poultry, on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. You've issued a statement in the past that you're a leader in animal welfare, dedicated to the highest standards of animal care, give our birds space to roam, access to the outdoors, enrichments that support natural behavior, and a healthy, balanced diet with no antibiotics ever. You've said that DXE is an extreme group with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether and imposing a radical agenda that would threaten the livelihoods of Sonoma County farmers and the food security of millions of people. So we invite you on anytime, but let me say this. Really, I think it boils down to animal agriculture is on trial, because there is no nice, genteel way to produce as a society 75 billion chickens. Okay. This is the number of land animals killed for meat in 2022, over 75 billion chickens. If you see this, the vast majority of animals eaten are chickens. So essentially, this is an epic battle, Christina Koo, over animal agriculture. How much do consumers bear responsibility? Because all of this is online, and both sides are online. As we said, you can see everything that Purdue has to say about its corporate animal responsibility online. And you can also go to PurdueAbuse.com and read their 8-page report. Those are both sides of the story. Your thoughts, Christina?
I was actually part of a protest this weekend regarding this exact issues, and I just want to leave some hopeful messages to everyone watching. And I approached a security person who was monitoring the protest, and this security person said, I've watched your videos from DXE, and you have a right to be here. So there are also folks around the protest who came by, and they were shocked and appalled that the evidence that DXC has gathered is contrary to what they were misled as a consumer at certain stores, and the packaging and what you showed up in your program, how the chickens are raised. So definitely, I think the consumers will start to make that connection. What they're being told is not what some of the evidence that DXC shows. And, you know, furthermore, the security folks around the protest said, you know, so we don't like certain poultry companies. Are there ones that we should buy from? And I think the response to that was, you know, we don't support eating any sentient living being. So that train of thought really has to start to evolve and change. It's not that I'll just eat someone else, but the fact that they get educated on what better and healthier plant-based foods that they can eat instead. So that's a switch of mine completely. And I think for Zoe's speech, she's an incredible orator, and there's something that happens in court where once you know, if you ring the bell, you cannot unring it, meaning when if she's up there as a witness, she answers questions. And I believe that she will find a way to strategize and answer the best way she can, and including some aspects of her opening remarks here and her responses. So I feel she can do that, and she'll be very effective, I hope.
Excellent points. You're raising the issue that the theft charge was dropped. Okay, so getting back to the charges, if you're just joining us, Zoe Rosenberg faces about 5 years in prison, 1 count felony conspiracy, 3 misdemeanors, including trespass and vehicle tampering. But they dropped the theft charge, and the defense says, well, they did that so that to limit the discussion of the condition of the animals, which Zoe maintains was very, very sick, that they were the four chickens she rescued were very sick. And also to limit the footage, because a picture tells 1,000 words. So you can talk and talk and talk and talk about animal welfare standards, but some of the footage that DXC has released, which they say comes from inside these very farms that are associated with the case for which she is being charged, show animals on the ground, unable to turn around. We've shown it before, and we can show it again. But, you know, I want to go to Tiffany Brunelli. You are a retired law enforcement investigator who now works with DXC. You were actually there when Zoe was arrested, which was months after the June 2023 event where she went into the factory farm. Tell us about that.
Yes, it was after Wayne. It was out right after Wayne Chung's sentencing hearing, and she had spoke at the sentencing hearing, and she talked about this evidence that she had in this folder. And we had a large march with many of the people that were at the news conference over to the sheriff's office. And just out of the blue, it just seemed like out of nowhere, these officers descended on everyone and arrested Zoe. And it was just so shocking, because just peacefully marching, and then they arrested 2 of the other animal rescuers or investigators, and it was just completely, it seemed like they chose that specific time to arrest them to send out a message. There was so many different ways they could have, or different times they could have arrested.
My understanding was Zoe was actually carrying evidence, or what she says is evidence of animal cruelty, to hand into the sheriff's department. And when they first said Zoe Rosenberg, she thought, and it was possibly this gentleman here, this law enforcement officer, she thought he was coming to her to get the information. She was still believing that they might have asked for information, but it turns out they were calling her name in order to arrest her.
Yes, it was shocking. She said that too. She thought, finally, they're taking our allegations seriously. They're coming out here to meet me. We won't even have to go inside. I'll just hand over the information now. And suddenly she's in handcuffs. It was just unbelievable. It just didn't even feel real.
So I want to ask some of the attorneys here, Shaka, what is your thought about the fact that she was originally charged with something like 7 felonies, and they've kept reducing the charges over time. At first, she was facing 20 years in prison if convicted on all counts. Remember, DXC says even if these 4 chickens were healthy, they'd be worth approximately $24. So if you shoplifted 4 packages of chicken from a supermarket, essentially you'd be stealing something worth $24. But they say they were not even worth that amount because they were very ill, so they had 0 value. And perhaps that's one reason that they dropped the theft charge. But DXC says the reason is that they didn't want to have open the door to evidence of animal cruelty. Shaka. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they definitely dropped the theft charge as a result because they didn't want to have that go to the jury. They didn't want to see the jury have them argue over whether or not the value was 0 or 24 versus what condition were the chickens in, because now you get to see the condition of the chickens, at why there was no value. I think DXC even said that the rates of salmonella at this particular chicken farm was even higher than the ones typical in the country. So I think they really want to keep out that evidence, also the evidence of them squabbling over such a little amount and overcharging Zoe. And so I think in that sense, you see the prosecution really trying to limit the evidence that comes in here.
Yeah, and I'm not a scientist. I can't independently confirm any of that. This is the stuff that's going to be discussed at trial. But my question to, we've got the other attorney here, and you can jump in too, Shaka, is how far will she be able to go? Zoe Rosenberg gave an impassioned speech that was truly brilliant. I mean, I think it was historic. But will she be able to give that speech to the jury? How will that work? Will there be objection, Your Honor, when she starts saying, well, the chickens that I picked up and took, they were missing this, had this? Will they stop her at that moment? Shaka, you want to take that one again?
Yeah, so in terms of Zoe getting on the stand and being able to actually say what she said that we saw during the press conference, that's going to be up to how her attorneys are able to position her on the stand, the questions that they're able to ask of her, and of course what the prosecution might open up on redirect. So it's going to depend on which strategy they're going to use and how she's able to convey that to the jury. Hopefully we're going to see motions in limine. Hopefully they won't limit any of that testimony, and so we'll find out today kind of what jury instructions and what limitations of that testimony there might be. Big
question. Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, and I just want to add that. I mean, obviously, right, there are a lot of strategies between Zoe and her attorneys and how to craft the questions and where it may go. And like the concept of where I've seen it in courtrooms where witnesses will say something and, oh, you weren't supposed to say that. That was, outside the realm of the question. And they will strike that from, the record. But that concept of, once you ring a bell and people have heard it, a jury heard that, they're instructed to not remember it. And that is something that humans sometimes have a hard time doing. So that could happen.
Well, we've had an extraordinary day. We're going to wrap up our coverage, but I want to go back out to Johnny and find out what's happening there on the scene. I'm going to unmute you, Johnny. Bring us up to date.
It's winding down. A lot of the observers have slowly walked away, and the rest of the DXC activists from around the country have ventured off inside of the courthouse to just kind of see what the parameters are of the case. Lots of optimism, lots of love being shared from activists around the country, like I said, and people that are just coming up, and lots of curiosity from the window above. Seems to be a waiting area up on top where defendants in other cases in the courthouse are kind of waiting, so you can see them peering through the window down and looking to see what the fiasco is. And it's quite a unique experience. I don't think I've ever been part of such
how much news media was there?
Other than myself, I saw 4 other big cameras. I didn't really pay attention to to which media outlets, but I was definitely just making sure that my camera is steady and that I was trying to
Yeah,
absorb
but
all
you saw
the elements
4
around
other
me.
media outlets with big
Correct.
cameras. So that would probably be from the local news media there, which I think, frankly, is really good because sometimes there's no media coverage.
Correct.
Renee, what's your thought on that? That there were 4 big cameras, as Johnny would say.
Well, I mean, my God, the cameras are they're everywhere, and they are trying to display that this is something that is, they're trying to magnify this case in a way that, that is like they're stealing. What's going on? They took away the theft charge. And I was just sitting here thinking, what is that? What is really being stolen here? It's not really a $24 amount of birds. It's our right as a society to know the truth. They are stealing our right to know the truth. They're stealing our right to know what's really going on behind secret doors of total cruelty. And they are shining spotlights out there. It's all a big smoke screen, these cameras. It's a big smoke screen against what's really happening. And they are stealing the society's rights to really know the truth of what's really going on behind those closed doors.
Well, having been in media for many years at some of the biggest news operations, the fact that they're there, let's give them kudos for covering it. Because again, the reason I founded Unchained TV, which is a nonprofit news network covering animal rights, is because I saw that all these things weren't getting covered, or a little blip. Or, I attended a demonstration where there were maybe 10,000 people and they showed 2 people crossing the street and they said, these people stop traffic. There's no discussion. So that's when I said, you know what, we got to cover this.
Well,
and that's why we're covering it now. But the fact that there were 4 big cameras, which means probably the local news stations, I always have hope. I always have optimism.
I hope they're covering it in the direction of Zoe Rosenberg, and they're not covering it in favor of, the torture chambers.
And Jane,
yes, go
I
ahead.
just want to add that I've been part of DXC as well, and they have a really robust media press conference unit within DXC where folks write really, really well-written stuff for the press releases, and I'm very proud of them. They have that system down really well, and I support them. And I think this is you're seeing the fruit of their work.
Yeah. And, the New York Times just did a whole big, long story on this trial. I would say very objectively, it was not very favorable. In fact, they never showed any pictures of chickens in the main story. They linked. So you had to click on the links to see, but they showed people, cows roaming and people milking cows gently. To me, it was an unfair piece. I commented and I said, how can you do a story about somebody being put on trial for rescuing 4 chickens from a slaughter truck and not show chickens? And they did publish that comment. And by the way, the reason I call this the chicken rescue trial, if you look at the definition of rescue, it says to save someone from a dangerous or distressing situation. So either way, it's a rescue because they weren't going out. Those 4 chickens were not going to be waltzing out of that location alive. The question is, and the jury can decide, was this a legal action or an illegal action? And before we wrap up, I want to get into mistake of law. As you heard from the news conference and for others commenting, they're not going to be allowed. The judge, first of all, kudos for the judge for not putting a gag order, because there have been a gag order in some of these past cases. So if there was a gag order, Zoe wouldn't have been able to give that incredible speech that she gave outside court. So kudos to the judge for doing that. But on the other side, he said the necessity defense cannot come in. And the necessity defense, well, I'll let one of the lawyers explain it. Shaka, what is the necessity defense? And you can unmute. Defense.
Yeah, so the necessity defense, which is a defense that basically says you can commit an illegal act if you're going to stop a greater harm or greater evil. Unfortunately, that's only been applied to human situations. Kristen Stilt, I think I mentioned earlier, a Harvard law professor, had actually written an amicus trying to apply that standard to our animal friends, and unfortunately, that was rejected by this judge. So they're going to have to rely on mistake of law. However, mistake of law has typically not been used to completely absolve anyone of criminal or even civil liability, really. So that's going to be the issue here is to what degree will mistake of law kind of maybe reduce the charges or maybe make sentencing a little bit different. But mistake of law typically has not been used because we normally say making a mistake of the law is no excuse for the law. So judges typically follow that. So mistake of law is going to be a real nuanced way for them that they're going to have to maneuver here.
Well, let me say this before we talk, there have been similar cases that have resulted in acquittal. And I think this is very important to point out. We had the case of the Baywatch actress Alexandra Paul and her associate Alicia Santorio, and they did a very similar thing a few years ago. This truck, I believe, was on public property, but I'm not sure. Yes, I think it was. But there you see, there's Alexandra Paul, former Baywatch star and animal activist, and her associate there, also with DXC, Alicia Santorio. And this was footage again. The defense allowed this footage to come out. Half the time in these cases in general, nobody even knows that anything's been done until DXC releases the footage. And sometimes they live stream it. And she was able to testify. And I believe that's one of the reasons why she was acquitted. Both of them were acquitted.
We also choose these animals because they tell best the story of what's going on behind these closed doors. And we document it and we share it with the world because nobody else is showing people what's going on. The only reason people know what's going on behind these closed doors is because of animal investigators.
And she was acquitted, but there are those who say, guess what? The prosecution has learned from that acquittal and is using new strategies, Ellen Dent, essentially eliminating the theft charge to try to limit the kind of evidence that can come in so that the trial does not become a debate about conditions inside the slaughterhouse or the farms that supply chickens to the slaughterhouse or the conditions on the truck riding to the slaughterhouse. It's trying to limit and eliminate that evidence. What are your thoughts, Ellen?
Well, I believe by doing that, they're concealing the truth from the public. As we've said before, you can see the conditions that these chickens were in. The public deserves to see that. The jury deserves to see that so that they can make a fair decision about, the actions of Zoe that day. And, the need for those chickens to have been rescued. You can see the photos here that you just showed. These chickens are in dire conditions. It really hurts my heart just to see them going through that. And I feel that, the majority of the public would agree with that. And they would agree that what Zoe did was right. And that there should be a right to rescue, these innocent creatures who, have done nothing to us and yet are met with extreme violence. Yeah.
Here's an interesting question somebody's asking on social. How is the jury selected? Meat eaters only. It's kind of funny, but in a way, it's serious because this is a culture war. Let's call it what it is. Tiffany Brunelli, former law enforcement investigator, now a DXC supporter. It's a culture war. People say, I eat chicken. They don't even say I eat chickens. They say I eat chicken. In their minds, it's a thing. It's a dish. It's not an individual. They're not individuals. So how much blame does the public, how much responsibility, let me put it that way, does the public have?
Well, Jane, thank you for being the maybe the only media that's streaming this live. And I feel so inspired after Zoe's speech that if we could get this out to the mainstream media, if national news was covering it and folks could hear about this and they would say, what's going on with the chicken or the chickens that I'm buying? And I have to admit, a few years ago, I was one of those shoppers who saw the little hen on the egg carton out in the sun in this idyllic field, and I would pay the few extra dollars. So I think if we could really get this out, get her beautiful speech out to the public, and people really start going, because people want to do the right thing. They want to pay the extra dollars for the so-called humane chickens and eggs. So if I'm going to share her speech out today, if we can all share this out today, if this could get out, I think people, the general public, would really be curious what's really going on with what we're eating on our plates.
Well, sometimes I think that, people believe what they want to believe. It's really a question. Look, in their statement, and I think there's a agreement here. The corporation says DXC is an extreme group with the ultimate goal of ending animal agriculture altogether. I think that we could agree that is their goal, ending animal agriculture altogether. Renee, you're a former cattle rancher turned vegan farm sanctuary owner. You're the perfect person to answer that one.
I definitely want to end animal agriculture. And when I first went vegan on a cattle ranch back in 2014, I was terrified to say that out loud. But, I'm not anymore. That is my main mission. And one of the reasons I really think this is to have Zoe's speech streaming internationally or even nationally or even statewide, it is going to compromise all the billions in subsidies that all the governments pay into all these organizations, these chicken farms and other types of farms, so-called farms, all the banks and investors, the major banks that invest in all of these so-called farms, all of the retail food services, the big ones, can I say it out loud? Like the big Costco's and the Walmarts, all these big companies that purchase the bodies of these animals. For Zoe's speech to go viral is going to put everybody on like the hot seat, all the advertising, all the media. Agribusiness spends so much money on these PR campaigns to make everybody think that these are humane-free, antibiotic-free, family farms. BS. These are not family farms. These are torture chambers. These are torture chambers.
Well, again, I want to say flat out, we invite any companies and agencies involved in this on. And I do want to point out what Purdue has said about its operations: no cages or crates, no antibiotics, no drugs, freedom to express normal behavior. Well, that's, look, that is subjective. Like one person can see it one way, one person can see it another way. Audited and verified. That's another issue, because some people say, well, the agencies that are auditing, question them. I urge everybody, go to corporate.purduefarms.com/responsibility/animal care. Investigate for yourself. It's a very in-depth record. Okay. But by the same token, you can also go to purdueabuse.com, and DXC has an 8-page investigatory report that they've issued. So we are here showing that this is a huge issue, and we want to bring it to light. We want to bring it to the public's attention. And really, it's up to individuals to do the homework. We can't do all the homework for you. We're going to wrap it up. We've just been an hour and a half. I want to thank my fantastic panel. Just really amazing. And And Johnny, you did a good job out there. First time as a reporter for Unchained TV, did a really wonderful job. Now they're back in court tomorrow. So I think we're going to be back in court with them tomorrow to see what happens, because there could be a lot of very dramatic developments. These cases are like roller coasters. I've covered many cases for major networks, and I can tell you that cases of this magnitude are like runaway freight trains. You never know what's going to happen from one moment to the next. And I've covered some of the biggest cases in the last 40 years. So you can't predict what a jury's going to do. You don't know for sure one way or another if the defendant's going to take the stand. You don't know. They submit all these big witness lists. You don't know if half or even a quarter of those witnesses are going to show up. And so there's just question mark after question mark after question mark. But one thing we're going to do is be here covering it. We invite the companies that are associated with this case on anytime. We would love to dialogue with you. We want to thank our fantastic panel for being here. And we invite our audience to come back tomorrow. We are actually going to go at the lunch break at around 12 noon. We're going to go live tomorrow at 12 noon because we went live today because there was a news conference scheduled. So tomorrow we're going to be live at 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And I urge all of you to join us for the trial of Zoe Rosenberg.